So one of my viewers shared that they were really unsure of which consequences to use in their classroom. So in today's video, I'm going to share 5 simple consequences that any teacher can use in most classrooms. Hey teacher friends, my name is Michelle Holliday and I am a behavior strategist. I help teachers in schools learn how to manage their students and their classrooms with less stress and less struggle. So in today's video, I am sharing 5 simple consequences that teachers can use in most classrooms. So when I say most classrooms, these consequences really can work for elementary and secondary classrooms. You may have to edit them a little bit to fit your unique classroom, but these are consequences that have been classroom tested and they are very simple to implement. Before I give any consequences, I want to give my perspective on what consequences are and what they mean, especially in today's classroom. So for me, consequences are no longer a form of punishment, i.e. a way to get back at the student or to make the student pay for their misbehavior. Instead, I view consequences as a way to deter or discourage students from repeating that same misbehavior. So when I'm looking to use a consequence, I'm not trying to get back at the student. I'm really trying to deter or discourage them from doing it again, and maybe even provide a teachable moment. You'll notice that most of the consequences that I'm sharing today are not harsh or rough, but they can be very effective in reducing student misbehavior. Consequence number 1, verbal redirection. Now, for me, there's a difference between verbal correction and verbal redirection. So when you are verbally correcting a student, to me, that means that you are telling them what they have done is wrong and that it's not okay in the classroom or in the setting that you're in. When we're talking about a verbal redirection, what you're doing is redirecting their focus onto the behavior you want to see. So when I do a verbal correction, I will say, that's not okay. What you did was unacceptable, and I don't want to see that again. But when I'm using a verbal redirection, I won't even mention the misbehavior that occurred. Instead, I will speak on the behavior I want to see. So for example, if I see a student who's like rocking back in their chair, instead of saying, stop rocking in your chair, which focuses on the misbehavior, what I will say is seat down or all 4 legs on the floor. If you notice, I didn't mention the misbehavior. I simply spoke on what I want to see. So verbal redirection is a consequence that can reduce the behavior because it refocuses the student on what they should be doing. Technically, when it comes to a consequence is anything that happens after a behavior. But when it comes to schools, for the most part, when we're talking about consequences, we're talking about something that happens after a behavior that hopefully will stop the student from continuing that misbehavior. That's the way I'll be using consequences for the rest of this video. The next consequence is what I call a think sheet. Some teachers call it a reflection sheet, but for me, it's simply a piece of paper that is in 4 squares and it asks 4 questions. Number 1, what happened? Number 2, why did it happen? Number 3, what could you have done differently? And number 4, how can I help? I have found that by asking these simple 4 questions, it will have the student reflect on their behavior and possibly even brainstorm some other ways they could have behaved. This is also a great segue into a one-on-one conference that I'll talk about later that I can share, or a great way to get feedback from the student regarding the behavior. At times, if a student is repeating a misbehavior, I will give them a think sheet to complete during a non-academic time or during a break time, and then what we'll do is we'll review it later together. Consequence number 3 is a temporary seat change. So there are times, especially when a student is being disruptive, when a temporary seat change is effective. I will simply request the student move from their current seat to another area in the classroom, possibly another desk across the room, or possibly an area next to my desk, in order to break them away from the cycle that they are engaged in. Sometimes this will cause the student to rethink their behavior, especially when they don't want to move away from the rest of the class. If the student refuses to move to the temporary seat change, Then I go to my next consequence, which is owed time. So I will not enter into a power struggle with the student in terms of making them move to another seat. I've made the request. I make sure they've heard me. And then that time that they waste not moving or not following direction is now owed back to me during a non-academic or break time. And I use this consequence with other select behaviors where students are non-compliant or not following directions for a length of time. I will say to them, it is your choice whether you follow my direction or not, but please understand the time that you waste not following my direction is now owed back to me. And usually that owed time is spent during a break time, a choice time, or some other preferred task where they would rather be engaged with the students or engaged in another activity, but instead they now owe the time where they will either sit at their desk completing a think sheet or their makeup work. And even if they don't want to finish their makeup work or their complete sheet, I just insist that they stay at their desk. Consequence number 5 is one-on-one teacher conference. Now, again, some people are saying, well, how is that a consequence? Remember, I'm not trying to punish the student. What I'm trying to do is deter or discourage them from repeating that same behavior. When I am implementing one-on-one teacher conferences, I will have the student move to the side so they're out of the earshot of the students. I will also, if I can, have their back is facing the students and my eyes are facing the students so I can still observe what is going on. And I will do something very similar to the think sheet. I will ask the student, what happened? What is going on? Why are you acting in this manner? And I am, during this time, listening to their response. During the conference, the students have an option to share or not share with me what is really going on. And I take their response as a form of data as well. So if they don't respond, what I will just do is continue and give them a suggestion on another way that they can behave. I try to point out the fact that I know they want to do well in class, I know they want to do well in school, and I will suggest a way for them to get back on task and back on track. And depending on the student, this really can be effective. So there you have it, 5 simple consequences that you can use in most classrooms. Number 1 is verbal direction. Number 2 is think sheet. Number 3 is temporary seat change. Number 4 is owed time. And number 5 is one-on-one conference. Which one of these 5 consequences are you currently using in your classroom or thinking about using in your classroom? Please share that with me in the comments below. I will talk to you soon.